Hello, church family. It's Wednesday, and it's time for another Wednesday Minister Moment. Last week, I mentioned or talked about the first beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, today I want to go on to the next one, and that's blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, we hear that and we think, well, how is someone who is mourning, how are they blessed? I mean, when you lose someone that you love, when you lose a job, when you lose a relationship breaks down, when you lose a dream, maybe when you've been oppressed and you grieve and mourn because of your oppression, how can someone in that situation be blessed? I mean, when you mourn, when you grieve, you go through a bunch of different emotions, guilt and anger and loneliness and despair and fear, and you have all this confusion. That does not feel like a blessed situation. Well, Jesus often, as he speaks to people, he tries to help people to have a different perspective on things, and I think that he's trying to do that here. In Isaiah chapter 61, verses 1 through 3, we read these words. It says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair." Now, this Old Testament prophecy was read by Jesus when he walked into a synagogue in chapter 4 of Luke. He reads from this prophecy, and when he sits down after reading it, he makes a statement. He says that he declares that this passage in Isaiah has been fulfilled in your hearing. So Jesus was helping them to see that the time had come for healing. The time had come for the freeing of the prisoners. The time had come for joy for those who were dealing with grief and mourning. But we know that when Jesus was here on earth, while he healed people and he even raised some people from the dead, there were still many people who grieved. There were still many people who mourned. And since that time, people still die. And so many of us have experienced that period of mourning, and it's not an experience that we want. Jesus came to conquer death. Now, that wasn't the only reason that he came to this earth, but one of his primary goals was to conquer death. Through his own death, through his burial and his resurrection on the third day, what Jesus did was he showed us that he had the power over death. And that if we are in Christ, we have that same ability. Not from ourselves, but from him, that he delivers us from that, which basically means that there is something for us in the future. There is hope. What Jesus does is he gives us hope. As Thessalonians tells us, we should grieve as those who have hope rather than those who don't have hope. Because if we're in Christ, there's hope for us. Revelation 21, verse 4, the writer of Revelation says this. He says, "He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." And when he's writing that, he's talking about what will happen in the end when we all enter into that new creation, when we all can be with God forever. The point is this, that even though we experience grief and even though we mourn, we are blessed because if we trust in Christ, that's not the end of things. There will be joy. We will be comforted. And God actually gives us an opportunity to comfort one another. That's what we're supposed to do as the church, to comfort one another. But not only that, God has shown that he comforts us himself. In John chapter 11, Jesus goes to where Mary and Martha are at, and their brother Lazarus had died. And Jesus knows that he's going to raise Lazarus in just a few short minutes. But yet he weeps with Mary and Martha. He grieves with them because he knows their pain. And what that tells me is that when we weep, we don't weep alone. We have a God who cares about us, who loves us even in our grief, but a God who gives us hope. So my encouragement to you is that as you mourn, when you experience those times of mourning, don't forget the hope that Jesus gives to us. And don't forget that you have a church family who loves you, and that you have a God who loves you as well, who weeps with you. I hope this is encouraging to you, and I hope you have a blessed day.